I walked into Tyler's penthouse to steal back my family's legacy, but I left with something he could never sue me for, his unborn heir. He thought he'd stripped me of every asset I owned, until he realized I was carrying the only one that actually mattered. The gavel didn't just hit the wood that afternoon, it hit my heart. Tyler, the man with a face carved from cold marble and a soul made of fine print, had officially dismantled my family's estate. He stood there in his $5,000 suit, watching my father collapse, without so much as a flicker of regret. He took the properties, the savings, and, cruelly, the golden iris locket, a family heirloom that wasn't even part of the legal discovery. Desperation is a jagged thing. It drove me to his high-rise at midnight, scaling the service elevator with a stolen keycard and a heart hammering against my ribs. I only wanted the locket. I wanted one piece of my soul back. But as I crouched in his darkened study, the familiar, violent wave of morning sickness hit me. The lights flickered on, casting Tyler's long, predatory shadow across the floor. He didn't look surprised to see me. He looked like a hunter who had been waiting for the trap to spring. He didn't know I was there for the gold, and he certainly didn't know that the biological ticking clock inside me was about to blow his cold, calculated world into a million jagged pieces. The penthouse smelled of expensive cedar and the cold, metallic tang of air-conditioned silence. I moved like a ghost across the plush Persian rug, my heart a frantic bird battering against my ribs. Tyler's studding was a sanctuary of calculated power, floor-to-ceiling mahogany shelves filled with leather-bound precedents he had used to bury my family alive. My breath hitched as my fingers brushed the cool velvet of a jewelry box sitting atop his desk. I flipped the latch. There it was, the golden iris locket, shimmering under the moonlight like a teardrop. The moment my fingers closed around the gold, the world tilted. A sudden violent surge of vertigo washed over me, and my knees buckled. It wasn't just the adrenaline, it was the biological storm I'd been hiding for weeks. The air in the room felt too thin, and as I gripped the edge of the desk to keep from collapsing, the sharp click of a light switch shattered the darkness. Searching for something that doesn't belong to you, Sharon, or just admiring the view from the top? Tyler stood in the doorway, his silk shirt unbuttoned at the collar, looking every bit the predatory victor. I tried to stand tall, shoving the locket into my coat pocket, but my vision swirled with gray spots. "It never belonged to you," I managed to rasp, though my voice was thin. He didn't move toward the phone to call the police. Instead, he walked to the heavy oak door and turned the deadbolt with a chilling, final thud. The sound echoed through the room like a prison gate closing. He approached me slowly, his eyes scanning me with the same terrifying precision he used to dismantle witnesses on the stand. He stopped inches away, his shadow swallowing me whole. "You look like you're about to faint," he remarked, his voice a low, dangerous velvet. His gaze dropped to my open bag, which had spilled slightly on the desk. He didn't see the locket. His focus snapped to the amber plastic bottle rolling toward his hand. He picked it up, rotating it slowly. The silence turned suffocating as he read the label. "Prenatal supplements," he whispered, the words sounding like a heavy sentence. He leaned in closer, his scent, sandalwood and expensive scotch, overwhelming my senses. He didn't look angry, he looked predatory in a way I hadn't seen in court. He reached out, his thumb grazing my jawline, forcing me to look at him. "The timeline is interesting, Sharon. We haven't seen each other since the night of the gala, exactly 10 weeks ago. Now, tell me why I shouldn't be calling my lawyer to draft a non-disclosure agreement before you leave this room." The interrogation had begun, and for the first time, the man who owned everything looked like he finally had something to lose. The sky outside the floor-to-ceiling windows bruised into a deep, violent purple before the first crack of thunder rattled the glass. Almost instantly, the penthouse groaned as a mechanical hum kicked in, the smart glass transitioned to an opaque obsidian, and heavy security shutters slid into place, sealing us in a tomb of brushed steel. Tyler didn't flinch. He simply set the vitamin bottle on the desk with a clinical tap of his finger. "Storm protocol," he muttered, though his eyes never left mine. "The building is on total lockdown until the winds die down. We aren't going anywhere, Sharon." I sank into his leather executive chair, not because I was invited, but because my legs could no longer support the weight of my secrets. "Why am I here, Tyler? You won. You took the house, the firm, even the locket. Why keep the locket on your desk like a trophy?" He paced the length of the room, his shadow stretching across the mahogany like a dark stain. "I didn't keep it as a trophy. I kept it because it was the only thing your Uncle Marcus couldn't track through the legal ledgers." He stopped, turning to face me with a look of weary iron. "You think I enjoyed that trial? I was a pawn, Sharon. Your uncle has enough leverage on my firm to bury me under the same dirt I threw on your father.
I dismantled your family's estate to keep him from burning it all to the ground with you inside it. The revelation was a physical blow, sharper than the litigation. My own blood had sold us out, and the man I'd cast as the devil had been the one holding the match to save the forest. But as the room spun, the betrayal was overshadowed by a far more visceral rebellion in my gut. The scent of Tyler's cooling espresso on the desk suddenly felt like a poison gas. I doubled over, my hand flying to my mouth, my skin turning a translucent, sickly gray. Tyler was at my side in an instant, his large hand steadying my shoulder with a terrifyingly gentle grip. "You're trembling," he whispered, his brow furrowing as he searched my face for the truth he already suspected. "Is it the stress, or is it something else? Tell me the truth, Sharon. What is really happening here?" I pushed his hand away, the bile rising in my throat as another roar of thunder shook the penthouse. The irony was too thick to breathe. I looked up at him, my eyes stinging with tears of rage and exhaustion, and let the truth spill out like a jagged shard of glass. "You think you're so thorough, Tyler. You think you audited every single one of my assets?" I choked out a bitter, watery laugh. "You missed one. You didn't take everything. You left me with a souvenir from that night at the gala, and used 10 weeks along." The silence that followed was heavier than the storm outside. For the first time in his life, the man who owned everything had absolutely nothing to say. The silence that followed my confession was more deafening than the thunder rattling the penthouse shutters. Tyler didn't flinch, didn't gasp, and didn't offer a hand to comfort me. Instead, his eyes turned into chips of blue ice, the gears of his legal mind audibly grinding behind a mask of high-tensile composure. He stood slowly, smoothing the front of his shirt as if he were preparing to address a Supreme Court justice. The air in the room shifted from heavy humidity to a dry, clinical chill. 10 weeks, he repeated, the words dropping like lead weights. He began the bass, not with the frantic energy of a panicked man, but with the rhythmic precision of a strategist closing a trap. He stopped at a sleek recessed cabinet in the wall, punching a code into a digital keypad. The door hissed open to reveal a state-of-the-art medical suite, the kind of luxury only a man obsessed with control and privacy would maintain. He pulled out a sterile, rapid diagnostic kit. "I don't deal in souvenirs, Sharon. I deal in evidence," said. The command was soft, but it carried the weight of an iron shackle. I sat, my heart hammering against my ribs as he snapped on a pair of latex gloves. The sound of the rubber hitting his skin was a sharp, predatory sting. He knelt before me, his movements efficient and devoid of warmth. As he took my hand, his grip was firm, not to hurt, but to ensure I couldn't pull away. "This stays within these 4 walls," he whispered, his face inches from mine as he primed the needle. "Until I have a digital confirmation, you are a ghost. But if this comes back positive," he paused, the needle hovering over my skin, and for a fleeting second, the cold litigator vanished, replaced by a man looking at a miracle he hadn't authorized. "If this is mine, you become the most valuable asset I've ever managed. I will protect you with the same ruthlessness I used to ruin you, because if you fall, I fall with you." The sting of the needle was nothing compared to the look in his eyes. I realized then that I wasn't just a woman he had wronged, and I wasn't just a mother-to-be. I was a weapon he had accidentally forged, and he was terrified of whose hand was going to pull the trigger.
The chime of the elevator was followed not by a greeting, but by the muffled, rhythmic thud of a suppressed weapon. Tyler's head snapped toward the foyer, his tactical instincts overriding the clinical coldness of a moment ago. He didn't hesitate. He lunged, dragging me from the chair and pinning me against the mahogany bookshelves, just as a silent projectile shattered the medical kit on the desk. Shards of glass rained down like diamonds, glittering in the dim emergency light. "My uncle," I breathed, the realization hitting me harder than the adrenaline. "Marcus doesn't leave loose ends," Tyler hissed, his hand pressing firmly against my shoulder to keep me low. "He doesn't just want the estate, Sharon. He wants the bloodline erased." He moved with a lethal fluidity I hadn't seen in the courtroom, reaching under the lip of his desk to kill the remaining lights. The penthouse plunged into a terrifying velvet blackness. He navigated the shadows by memory, guiding me toward the reinforced safe room behind the library wall. But as we moved, my hand instinctively went to my pocket, clutching the golden iris locket. "The locket," I whispered, my voice trembling. "He's killing for a piece of jewelry." Tyler paused, his eyes scanning the thermal display on his security tablet. He snatched the locket from my hand, his thumb catching on a nearly invisible seam in the gold casing. With a sharp click, the heirloom didn't just open, it transformed. A slim, high-density microchip slid from a hidden compartment in the filigree. "This isn't just a family memento," Tyler murmured, the blue light of the tablet illuminating the shock on his face. "It's an encrypted key to a blind trust. Your father didn't lose the fortune, Sharon. He hid it. And this chip,
It's coded to the DNA of a direct fan's heir. Another round of fire hissed through the air, splintering the wood inches above his head. Tyler shoved the chip into his own pocket and pulled me into the crawl space of the panic room, sealing the heavy steel door just as the intruders breached the study. The silence inside the vault was absolute, save for the ragged sound of our breathing. Tyler turned to me, his gaze no longer that of a litigator, but of a man who had just realized the child I was carrying wasn't just a liability, it was the only key to a kingdom. He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek with a sudden fierce protectiveness. "They think they're hunting a victim," he whispered, his voice vibrating with a dangerous new resolve. "They have no idea they just gave me the perfect motive to burn them all to the ground." The first rays of dawn filtered through the shattered glass of the penthouse, casting long, jagged shadows across the blood-stained mahogany of Tyler's desk. The air smelled of cordite and expensive scotch, a grim perfume for the wreckage of a dynasty. My uncle's men were gone, taken out by a security team that moved with the same surgical coldness Tyler used in a deposition. I sat on the edge of the velvet sofa, my hand resting protectively over my stomach, watching the man who had ruined my family sign a stack of documents with a steady, unflinching hand. "It's done," Tyler said, his voice a low rasp that vibrated in the quiet room. He didn't look like a victor. He looked like a man who had just brokered a deal with the devil to save a saint. He slid the papers across the desk toward me. It wasn't a settlement or a confession. It was a transfer of power. By the time the ink was dry, 51% of Thorne & Associates, the firm that had dismantled my life, belonged to the heir I was carrying. "You're making a child who isn't even born yet your boss?" I asked, my voice trembling with the weight of the irony. "I'm making him untouchable," Tyler corrected, his eyes locking onto mine with a fierce, possessive intensity. "And by extension, I'm making you the most powerful woman in this city. Your uncle can't kill a majority shareholder without the entire federal government breathing down his neck, but we still have one problem. The board. They'll eat us alive if they think this was a payoff." He stood, adjusting his cufflinks over bruised wrists, the clinical litigator returning to the surface. "There is only one legal maneuver left to ensure total immunity for both of us. Spousal privilege. If we are married, I cannot be compelled to testify against you for the break-in, and you cannot be used to dismantle me for the conflict of interest." The shock that hit the morning news cycle an hour later sent the financial markets into a tailspin. The headline didn't read about the midnight assassination attempt or the stolen locket. Instead, the world watched in stunned silence as the man who had ruthlessly bankrupted the Vance estate stood at the altar of a private chapel, sliding a ring onto my finger. The cameras captured a portrait of a miraculous reconciliation, but as Tyler leaned in to kiss me, a cold, calculated press of lips against mine, he whispered the truth into the hollow of my ear. "This isn't a fairy tale, Sharon. It's a merger. And together, we're going to take back everything they stole from us." We walked out of the chapel not as lovers, but as the ultimate legal weapon, leaving the world to wonder how the victim and the villain had become the most dangerous duo in